In this video, I will show you how to build more complicated views out of simpler views that you have defined with different view patterns. This is really a technique that you will have to learn in order to build anything more than the simple user interface that we have built so far in this application. And it's a great way to manage complex user interfaces by building interfaces from simpler elements. You can do this in Saltcorn in two different ways. One is to choose a view pattern that is based on another view. We will see this in different ways, first with the feed and then with the Kanban view patterns that we will use in this video. And they each expect you to already have built a simpler view with another pattern. The second way of composing more complicated views out of simpler views is to embed a view using the builder, where you can drag a view into another view. And we will also see that at the end of this video. So let's look again at this application we have built. We can see how we can have quite a lot of flexibility if we are editing a single record where you get this drag and drop interface, and you can rearrange this to, in whichever way you want. But if you want to see more than one database row on a screen, so far we've been stuck with this grid view that is defined as a table in the list pattern. So let's look at a different pattern that will give us a little bit more flexibility in how we show multiple records. And that is the feed pattern. So let's call this person feed. I choose the feed here, and we want people1 to be the table. So you can see what we're choosing here is an underlying view. So the feed in its configuration expects you to choose another view, which is going to be how one database row is shown. So we will choose show person. And then here you have the same options that you had when creating a list. You can add a link to create a new database row. So let's do that in the same way that we did for the list. And you can see we have a preview down here already. So this is maybe not what we want, but we can fix that later. Let's go to the next screen. We have a couple more options. I can choose how to order these. Let's just order them by name, so they'll be alphabetical. And I have pages again. And then I can also put each in a card, which gives you quite a nice view. We can see that in the preview here. And then I can also choose to have a different number of columns on different screen widths. Let's, for instance, go for a 2-column view. And so now here I have 2 columns. And let's have a look at that. So here we go. Here's our feed of cards that show different people. So I obviously, if I wanted to do this more seriously, I would want to rearrange these. Well, let's go ahead. And since we're not using the show view for anything else, let's go ahead and modify it to make it slightly better. So I can set, for starters, I can set all of these to, I can set all these to have a bit more space for the labels. And maybe this bio, let's put that down here. We'll do a something like an underline here. Get rid of this column. And do we want this edit view? I don't think so. Well, let's leave it on. And so now you can see that our cards look a little bit better. There's more space for the data labels. Since there's a smaller space here, we needed more columns for the data labels. And you know, this is okay. Okay, so the feed pattern is very useful if you are building, for instance, some kind of social media application where you want the updates to come one after another, the updates from the people you're following or the updates from an organization. You can put these in cards and show them in the feed here. And you have quite a lot of flexibility here. If you didn't put this in cards, it would look different, and you know, you can achieve different effects using that. You could mimic something that's sort of like a table by using the columns in the underlying show view, and then you can use that to display the data, but you might want a little bit more flexibility than you get from the list view. So you can also do that. I want to show you a different way of embedding views in views that uses a different underlying pattern. And the Kanban module works quite like the feed in that it expects you to design a show view that is the view of the task in each card in the Kanban board. So I'd quite like to show how to do that, and then we'll see how the Kanban uses the underlying show view to build up a Kanban table that you can drag around. So should we see if we can build a task list with a Kanban board in about maybe 5 minutes? Let's try that. So I start with a table for tasks. And each task is going to have a name. Which will just be a string. And do we need anything else? Let's have a description, which will also be a string. And maybe that will be enough to get started with. We can always add more later. So let's create some tasks here. Buy milk. Take out trash. And this is on Thursday night. That's when I have to take out my trash. So we have 2 tasks now. Oh, we need, if we're going to make a Kanban board, we need one more thing. We need a status, which shows you how you are in the progression of this task. This is, of course, the great invention of the Kanban board. So we'll call that status. And that will also be a string, but that will have some options. So let's use some software development terminology here. Backlog, that's stuff you will probably do at some point. Iteration is stuff you're doing in the current sprint, if you're doing that. In progress. Review when you're done. and done when you're done for sure. Right, so let's add another one. Fridge. Smelly stuff. And let's set some statuses. So that will be backlog, iteration, and in progress. Okay, so I think it's time to build our underlying view. So if you imagine a Kanban board, it's going to have multiple cards. You're going to drag them around. So we will need a view of each of those little cards, and then the Kanban board is going to do everything else. So let's create the show task, and this is going to be a show on tasks. Right. So I don't want all this stuff. Let's just get rid of everything. So if you select this one, delete contents, then you start from scratch. And I just want my two fields. And I want the first one to be the name. And I want that to be relatively large. Maybe an H3 is maybe excessive. And then the description. And that's it. That's all I want. I want the name of the task and then the description below it. So we're done. And then I'm going to build my Kanban board. So the first thing I need to do is to install the Kanban module. So that's here. That's installed. And now we're going to build our Kanban view. This is a view from the Kanban pattern. And it's going to be on tasks as well, so it will be on the same table that we had our underlying tasks on. And again here, it asks us in the configuration for the underlying view of each card, and that is show task. I can also choose an expand view. Let's leave that blank. And columns by column. Oh yes, so it asks for a field on the table which indicates the labels of the columns. This can be a string option field, or it can be a foreign key field, or anything like that. Positions field, we don't have that. We could have had that, but we don't need it. And again, we could have had a view to create, but we don't have any options here. And there's a bunch of stuff here. But let's just skip that. All sorts of options. You know, you can set a swim lane field, which, you know, gets pretty advanced, but let's just leave those at the defaults and see what this looks like. There we go. I have my Kanban board. And if I move one card around, so for instance, if I've taken out the trash and I'm done with that, I drop it in review, and that updates the value of the status column, because that was the one that we set to be the column in the Kanban board. So we can now go and see that take out the trash should be in review. Let's see, there we go. Take out the trash is in review. And I can, these aren't fixed. So you need to make sure that the order is right. And you do that by dragging them around. Backlog is first, that's correct, but in progress needs to go before review. And that should be stored now. Yes, so that's all good. Now I can drag these around. Empty fridge, I can put that in iteration. And again, that's stored. See how they swapped around? That's because I haven't set a position field, so it's random. the order inside the column is random because I have not nominated a position field. That means you can't use the order in the column for prioritization. Often we put the most important task at the top. There we go, see, they swapped around again. So let's do that. Let's, on tasks, add a position field. I'm going to make that a float. And in the view for the Kanban board, we will set that position to be stored in the position field. Now, it should remember this, so if I move one to the top, take out the trash, it remembers that. It remembers the order in the column. So now I know that I can put my most important cards at the top or at the bottom, however I want to. That is a super simple way to build a Kanban board in Saltcorn. There are lots of options in the Kanban board you can explore. Maybe we'll do another tutorial on that. But I think the point I wanted to make here was how the Kanban board uses an underlying view, which is of the show pattern. It doesn't have to be, but it just has to use one view that can show one database row, and it builds the Kanban board out of that. The other way in which you can embed a view within another view is to use the view widget in the builder. Several of the patterns have this. You may want to do it with show, and several of the patterns have this ability. In fact, I think all of the ones that have the builder to configure the view has this ability to embed a view inside another view. This facility to embed views within another view is not terribly useful in the absence of relationships between tables. So I know I keep on saying this, that something isn't very powerful until you have table relationships, and this is definitely a case in which this is true. And I promise in the next video I will dive into relationships between tables. We're going to link our task and our person table. But I will demonstrate the ability to embed a view within another view with a use case that is a little bit rare but somewhat useful. So we had this feed here of people. Let's go back to the cards. The cards were a lot nicer. We'll have the cards on the next page. And I may want to be able to quickly do a switch of the status of this person on the card. If you remember, we had a status, whether a person was a member or a prospect or lapsed. And we may want, without being able to edit all of the data, we may want the ability just to quickly switch their status. Because, you know, the date of birth is not going to change, and if the address changes, that's a major operation. You should go into an edit to do that, but you may quickly want the ability to switch the status of the person. So let's do that. So let's go to our view. We have our view of show person. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this view widget here to drop in another view that will allow us to change the status. So let's quickly do this. Let's create the underlying view that we want to drop in first. So I'm going to create a new edit view, which will be, for which the sole purpose will be to change the user status. Edit person status. There we go. And again, I'm just going to get rid of everything. Just select columns here, delete content. And I just want one field in here. That is the status we want to change. And let's do a radio group. That would be a nice little thing to change. Okay, and there we go. I'm just going to whiz through these because I don't really care about them. You don't need to set any of the other things there. Oh, one thing that I should set is autosave. So we're going to make this autosave any changes. And we're going to embed that here. So I choose the view, I drag it in, and then I choose the view to embed. This is already the first one that's chosen, but it could be, and it might not have been the first one. So you got to choose the view that you want to embed, and then you have to choose the relation. I will go into that a lot more, what this means when we have more meaningful relationships. Right now, just pick people1. It's the name of the table. That means it is the table that you're currently operating on. Once you have table relationships, that can be any kind of relation on the table. Also, none means that it will be a new edit, but we don't want that because we don't want to create a new row. We want to edit the one that we're currently looking at. So we choose the relation here. And then we're done. So let's have a look here. Does this work? All right, let's pick one person. We're picking on Rebecca. So we want Rebecca is right now a member. So let's look at our feed. Let's find Rebecca. She's a member. All right, so let's change her to a lapsed. Rebecca has not paid her dues. So that Rebecca is now lapsed. Let's go back and see if it's changed that. Rebecca is lapsed. There we go. So in the feed, I was able to embed and edit into the show that allowed me to change the value of the status field. Is this useful? Yeah, it's mildly useful. This will be a lot more useful when we have table relationships. For instance, if each person has a number of tasks they have to do, here I can embed a list of the tasks they're going to do. So in the next video, we're going to look at how to set up data with relationships between tables so that a person can have tasks, or maybe a task has persons. And then we will quickly see how this impacts the user interface. And then I think in the video after that, we will go a lot more into how table relationships can be used to structure the user interface.